Hi, this is Julie Deering, and I'm the editor here at Seed World. Today, I'm excited to be kicking off a new podcast series with one of our insiders, and that would be Jason Kaeb of KSI. Headquartered out of Sabetha, Kansas, KSI is a family business that got its start manufacturing conveyors. Through the years, it's identified market needs and brought new seed handling equipment into the industry, with the most recent developments happening in the seed treatment space. I had a chance to tour their facility a couple weeks back, and I can tell you firsthand, this business is focused on quality and looking to the future. In this series, Jason is going to talk about a number of different things, from seed wheel accuracy to slurry accuracy, and from the role of seed size to the future of automation, all with a theme of transparency. Today, Jason and I will be talking about the importance of transparency and why you should be willing to share the good, the bad, and the ugly with customers, even if it makes you uncomfortable. I hope you enjoy our conversation. One of the big things that is important is transparency, making data and information accessible and available. Not only that, accuracy. So why is transparency so top of mind for you right now?
When we look back at the history of automation and seed treatment and delivering seed, it's especially right now today with so many things going on in the marketplace in regards to stewardship, accountability, and maybe eventually regulations. Those things obviously bring some of this to mind, but for us, it goes a little bit deeper than that. I think there's a lot to be said for the industry and farmers and seed growers who are kind of coming to the point where they want to know more than what they have been given in the past. And so when they take a product or receive a product from the person or the organization that they're buying treated seed from, they're beginning to ask questions, and they're beginning to want to know more than just, does this seed look good or does it not look good? And they're wanting to have something that they can hang their hat on, as opposed to just say, yes, I trust you. I've worked with you for 5 years, for 10 years, for the last 50 years buying seed. And so I just inherently trust you. As our industry is getting younger and we're having more and more young farmers come in, those questions and the loyalty is maybe not the same as it used to be. We want to help our customers be on the leading edge of transparency, so that rather than have people coming to them with questions like, how can I trust you? What's on this? We want them to be able to have the tools and the information and the data in their toolbox so that they can actually lead that conversation, as opposed to reacting to questions that come up.
So being proactive versus reactive in terms of meeting customer concerns or demand.
Right. As soon as we find ourselves reacting to questions, we get to where we're maybe on the defensive of trying to prove what we already said was true. Instead, we can be, here's what I'm giving you, and by the way, I have all of this information to back this up. And it's not just important for the seed and the treatment to look good, but I want you to actually know that I'm doing everything that I said I'm doing, and that 100% of the product I told you is going to be on the seed is going to be there. And guess what? If it's not there, if I've done something wrong, if I've under-applied or over-applied, we want to be able to give you that information as well, because in the long run, that builds that trust and that builds the rapport that we want to have, and we want our customers to have with their customers.
What kinds of questions are you hearing from farmers, and what types of information are they asking for?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we get, and this has been kind of a trend it's been happening more and more every year, where we get growers and farmers that come through our booth, and 5 years ago, they wouldn't necessarily have been interested in what a seed treater was, or what our equipment, what a KSI seed treater would look like. But more and more, we're getting farmers that come through, and they want to know what makes the KSI seed treatment applicator different or better or unique than somebody else, because they have options, and they're going to their either seed retailer or seed salesperson, and they're noticing two different levels of seed treaters, and they're saying, I see this system and it looks really sophisticated and it looks like it can do a lot because there's a lot of money tied up in it. And then I see another seed treater that is maybe 15 years old and it doesn't look as sophisticated. And why does that matter? Why should I, as the farmer, care? And so those kind of conversations we love, because that's part of our goal, is to educate and to try and play a small role in educating the industry in not just the importance of seed treating, but the importance of understanding that actually what you have on that seed is important. It's not good enough to just be shiny. It's not good enough to just be red or a certain color. We want the AI that is supposed to be on that seed, that the application rate, the label says needs to be on that seed. We want that to be on there. And we want people to be asking that question.
When it comes to transparency and when it comes to being able to provide that detailed information, or how do you know that you can trust us, what tools and technologies are you using to be able to hand off that information?
Couple ways, and we've done this now since 2010 when we first released AutoTreat. 2009, 2010 is made a really strong effort in providing a simple, even ticket printout that lists the actual fluid ounces, actual milliliters of product that was delivered on the seed treatment side. And as our system has advanced and as we've gotten more and more tools available, that's kind of expanded into maybe, let's say, multiple different options and ways to show this to your customers. So we have multiple different receipts that we can show, or that we can give our customers the ability to print off and show different levels of transparency. We try to encourage people to use the receipt or the ticket, the delivery ticket that has the most information. And it's kind of interesting because what we generally get the first year is a hesitancy to show that. And up until now, until someone's moved from a manual system or a basic system to a fully automated system, there really is, even if they wanted to show information, it's completely new. There's no way to show information on a manual system. And so now they have the opportunity to hand a printout that shows, I delivered 100 fluid ounces of product or 67.5 fluid ounces of product against my target of 68 fluid ounces. And there's just some fear. There's a little bit of hesitancy at first to actually put that type of information in your customer's hand, because we get all the time, it'll bring up more questions than I feel equipped to answer. And I don't want to be dealing with a customer who's asking for a credit because I shorted them 2 ounces of product. It's going to create a headache that I don't want to deal with. That's kind of the initial response, but it doesn't take long for someone to be using a KSI AutoTreat system or a sophisticated automation system around the seed treater to begin to see that, one, I can trust my treater, I can trust the automation, and it's going to do what KSI told me it was going to do. And I can actually take that and I can have a conversation with my growers or with my customers, and they're actually more impressed. And I'm not, and if I am a little bit short on chemical or a little short on that run, there's not questions that come from that. It's maybe a conversation that I can take advantage of, and I'm differentiating myself from my competitors down the road. And so that's how we want to provide this to our customers. We want them to have that conversation. The other way that we can kind of show this is by actually showing not just transactional accuracy, but real-time, moment-by-moment accuracy throughout the course of a run. When you're treating seed and you have your customer watching you treat their seed, you see the seed coming out the end of the treater, and it may look good, and you may see something that either you're pleased with or you're not pleased with, but you don't actually know how many. You take a single seed, there's no correlation between that seed and how well the active ingredient is on that seed just by looking at that particular handful of seed you picked up. So if you walk over to the touch screen, you can see a moment-by-moment real-time trend graph that shows what each pumping station or pump stand is doing compared to the seed. And so that gives you, as a customer, as an operator, a really good feel, again, that you can trust what's happening. And when something does get out of whack, you can use that and see what's maybe going on, or again, talk through that, as opposed to just giving your customer information and being like, I guess this is what it is. You can take them back and you can actually have that conversation about it.
I'm going to take us backwards a little bit. Where are we as an industry?
I mean, honestly, kind of mentioned this a little bit ago, but there's so much about passing the eye test that goes into looking and seeing whether your seed was treated correctly or not. And whether it's the redder is better mindset, the darker the color, the better your seed is treated, or if it's light, it's not as good. Or shiny, the shiny, you want it to be shiny, all of these things. There's so much that goes into that. And it's really just because knowing, again, back to what the active ingredient is on the seed is impossible for us to tell without sending that in to get sampled. So you kind of revert back to the eye test. And so what happens is with that is it's not bad to want seed to look good. It's not bad that seed does look good, but it's really only telling a partial truth of what is actually on the seed, because the color is not an active ingredient. It's just colorant. The shininess generally is something that just makes the seed look good. It doesn't actually help the efficacy of that seed. And so you would kind of have to get beyond that, and you could have a better treated seed that actually looks worse than a really good treated seed, or vice versa. And so when we think about where we have come from, we're kind of trying to say, don't pay attention so much to what the seed looks like, but actually look at what the system is telling you that it's doing, trust that what the system is telling you that it's doing is right, and then actually take that data to the bank as opposed to just what your eyes are telling you.
So that's a little bit counterintuitive in terms of how do you interpret the seed, not necessarily eye appeal, but an eye inspection, which, kind of is instinctual.
Yeah, and we could spend a lot of time talking about the actual how seed, and we're talking specifically soybeans, how larger seeds and smaller seeds, how they are going to look different because they both get the same amount of active ingredient. So you're putting less volume on a large seed than you are a small seed relative to the size of seed. It's the exact same application rate, big seed, little seed. And so when you run a bunch of big seed through, if you're not adjusting maybe your water rate, or if you're not compensating for that with something other than the active ingredient, you may look at a very large seed and say, this doesn't look like it's treated very well. Look at a small seed and say, this is treated really well, when in reality, they're both treated perfectly. It's just the nature of the amount of coverage and product you need to have on that seed to cover it entirely.
And what are some of the educational pieces there?
I think from when we talk again back to kind of some conversations we have with farmers and growers, is probably the biggest challenge, and this maybe goes beyond educating. It's just there's really no good scientific way to check every single seed that comes through a seed treater and say this is done right or this is done wrong. With today's technology, it's too cost prohibitive. You can't do that. And so for us, as much when we try to educate, it's not really about saying, okay, prove to me that this is, this seed, if I pick the seed up, that it has that on there. You can do that. You can send it in the lab and you can get it sampled. But probably the biggest thing that we try to educate on is asking the questions around what's the active ingredient label rate, not necessarily what is the total application rate, what is the active ingredient that's going on the seed, and how is your system handling that? And can you show me data that if I have 40 units of seed and there's supposed to be 2 ounces per unit of this product, that you actually delivered that, and that I know that you've given me not just the right amount of seed, but the right amount of treatment, and that that's happened over the course of that run.
One of the things that we've previously talked about is data. Just the accumulation of data, the amount of data. Do farmers care?
Yeah.
And what's your sense there, and where do you think we're headed?
Well, we're definitely headed towards farmers caring. We're headed towards farmers caring, and I think that just as we kind of interact with our own customers, whether they're retail or a retail company or a professional seed dealer, the first response that they give us on that is that their customer base doesn't really care, and that they can spend $150,000 on a seed treater and they can deliver a product, or they can spend $50,000 on a seed treater and deliver a product. And both of them can be just as effective. Right now, today, I think we want farmers, maybe I would say we would want them to care more than they do. But we're definitely, as I mentioned earlier, we're definitely trending that direction, because so much of when we look at farmers wanting to cut input costs, and when we talk about somebody saying, okay, what can I get away with, or what can I do without? The seed treatment is an obvious one that kind of always comes to the top of that conversation, and you begin to talk about which products do I need to put on the seed, which products don't I need to have. If you're going to invest in product going on a seed, we think that you should be caring that that is going on correctly. Instead of just making the decision to just cut that, ask first, how are you doing it? Are you doing it correctly? Or are we wasting treatment? Am I paying for air in your system where you know that at the end of every year you have 10% loss, and so you're building that into your cost? Those types of questions would make and hold the industry accountable to what they're actually doing, as opposed to just accepting this per unit cost of treatment and seed being delivered to my farm and just moving on.
So when we have this information available and you're trying to give farmers confidence in the product that they're getting is what the retailer actually says it is. But we have some other forces at play here. We have increased regulations and scrutiny on what's being applied and what's going into the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a place for this in that conversation?
For sure. We don't want to give regulatory organizations a reason to come into the marketplace and enforce a bunch of regulations and processes and things that we all of a sudden have to follow. I think anybody in this industry would tell you we'd much rather self-regulate. In order to do that, again, it kind of comes back to the accountability that we put on ourselves and on our equipment and on the data we're collecting, so that when all of a sudden we start getting asked these questions, we can fall back on a system that we already are confident in. We're not trying to take shortcuts and leave out some of these things that aren't immediate needs today. Again, back to the example of being able to do the same thing or a similar thing, or I feel like I can deliver the same product with a piece of equipment that is half the price. That may be good today, but are we looking ahead 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road? Or are we setting ourselves up to just ignore that? And all of a sudden we're cracking open doors that give somebody a reason to come in, evaluate what we're doing and saying, well, you tell me you're doing this, but I don't see how you can prove to me that you're doing this. Those are types of questions that when we're dealing with seed treatment and chemicals and AI and things like that, that we don't really want to find ourselves not having answers for. And so I think from just an entire industry standpoint, it's important to make sure that those shortcuts we're not taking so that we can keep those regulatory organizations when they come into our facilities, and they do that we have answers for them, because when we have answers, that satisfies them. As soon as we don't have answers, as soon as we don't know what we're talking about and we say, well, we think, or according to this, it looks like we did this, that's when someone starts diving deeper into what we're doing. And we'd much rather, again, be on the forefront of what we're doing. And that's generally true whether we're dealing with, answering questions from our customers, being able to answer customers from a regulatory organization. We want to be on the forefront of that. And we for sure want the industry as a whole to be able to do that and feel good about what we're doing and not feel like we're, it's not like people are trying to take shortcuts for the sake of taking shortcuts. But again, when input costs are tight, you kind of begin to look at ways you can do this and you begin to satisfy immediate needs. And it's really important when we're talking about this type of process and equipment and seed treating and we're not talking about just a general commodity. It's a valuable product we're dealing with, not to take these shortcuts and to make sure that we're setting ourselves up to be transparent on both ends of the spectrum, to the customers, to the person we're buying seed treatment from, to the seed company we're buying seed from, and again, to a regulatory organization.
And so we're going to be talking about transparency over the course of the next year. What is it that has kind of drawn you to the issue of transparency and maybe like opening up this little black box that typically is unopened?
I think there's a level of feeling good about what you're providing. I know for myself, when we're doing business with people from business to business, that we like to deal with people who tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly about everything. And none of us are ignorant to think that we always deal with somebody who is always right and never makes mistakes. We want to deal with companies who are honest with us, who tell us when something's not right, and then we can work together to fix it. And I think in the ag world, I think people get that. I think that we understand each other when things are not always going well, that we can work through that. And so that we don't have to be afraid to be transparent. That's going to open up some things that maybe the industry as a whole doesn't want to deal with, and we maybe don't want to have as something we want to talk about. But at the end, I think that it feels good, and there's a lot of value in pulling together and actually being transparent. When we deliver a quality product, or when we pick up the phone and answer a question that a customer has, we want to be transparent because it allows us as an organization, I think, to be confident the next time we have a conversation. We didn't hold anything back, and then we gave our customers the same tools and the same ability in their system to be transparent with their customers the same way we want to be transparent with our customers.
And that's something that you can take into your own personal philosophy as well. It's just the importance of being transparent and having those open and honest conversations. That's it for today's Seed World Insider Talk with KSI's Jason Kaeb. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it to be of value. If you've got questions or you want to know more about KSI, feel free to reach out to Jason. You can follow him on Twitter at JasonKaeb_KSI. All right, thanks for listening, and we hope you have a great day.